From 2010 to 2020, 33 countries have registered very impressive growth rates, but they have also reduced the carbon dioxide emissions. So we can take the satisfaction today that there is no binary between the growth and the carbon dioxide. And a lot of people present in this room perhaps don't realize that this is a recent phenomena and recent strategy. So we can build on a strategy which integrates both the climate change agenda as well as our broad-based development agenda. So that is my first submission, particularly to this August gathering, that this debate, which I used to be part of it when I was at the World Bank, where we used to defend growth while the environmental lobbies in the bank used to say that you have to cut down on growth, is no longer valid. And the young men and women can take very much satisfaction that they should also look at both the lobbies as something which is a past and get on the new agenda which combines growth as well as environmental degradation or climate change. But that is a major issue, and you have heard Abid narrating all those panel discussions which we had. But I want to place this into the larger context of what are the mega trends in the global economy which are going to be valid, which we know it today, but these may disappear or this may be dissipated during the next 10 years, who knows? The world is moving so rapidly. But as of today, I would like to highlight that Pakistan's economy is not going to be completely isolated or insulated from the global trends, the mega trends. And we have to recognize them in designing our own development strategy. The first is a demographic transition. We all say Pakistan has a younger population. We don't realize that there are countries with aging population which are now requiring countries like Pakistan to supply them the skilled labor force in order to fill in the gap. And I give you the example of Japan, which I do very frequently. This was an ethnically pure country which never allowed the foreigners to come to their countries. Never. Now they have changed their mind because there is a decline of 0.7% every year in their population. And so they have asked Pakistan to supply them 80,000 IT professionals by 2030. So we have a younger population, and we can supply that to Japan, and Korea is now coming up with another demand from Pakistan. So those who say that we have a demographic dividend, right, but we have to translate that into a skill-based, demand-driven resource. We just cannot continue to produce all these graduates who have no demand in the market, either in Pakistan or the outside. And knowledge and retention of knowledge and application of knowledge is what is going to make the difference. Degrees, diplomas, certificates, grades, copying at the exams, cheating, memorizing are just going to lead you nowhere. So the new skill set is what have you got up here and how do you apply? And that's applicable to the younger people, which I go all over the country preaching this, and I wanted to repeat it. You will be a resource provided you have the knowledge and the skills. So that is the first mega trend. The second is there's a shift in economic power. There used to be, after the Soviet collapse, only one power, which was the United States. But China, just in 30 years, has now become the world's largest exporting nation with 15% share in the world markets, and is now the second largest economy after the US, And all projections show that in next 2 or 3 years, China is going to become the largest economy in the world. Now, we are very fortunate that China is a great friend of ours from Mao Zedong's time. Pakistani governments have come and gone. Chinese governments have come and gone. But there's a permanence in Pakistan-Chinese relationship. And we haven't taken advantage of that. Of course, CPEC has been something which we should all very much celebrate. But look, if we just can get 1% of the Chinese market for Pakistani exports, we would be doubling our exports from 30 billion to 60 billion. That means that even at this import level, you will have current account which is surplus. So we are not realizing that the balance of economic power is shifting, and we are not taking advantage of that. My third one is on the speed of technology. Now, technology is not only, ICT tools. ICT tools are not only for marginal efficiency, but they are to improve the productivity of the real sectors. Now, Mr. Naveed Kamar is a, agriculturist. Today we have drones with sensors which can go to the fields and tell you as to what kind of micronutrients are needed, what the soil conditions are to give you the fertilizer as to how much dosage, what kind of water you should give, because right now we flood the water, which is a waste. And that is what we should try to do. We should try to use the technology not only for digitalization of all our transactions, but use it for the real sectors, for industry, and for agriculture. And that is where we will take off. The fourth one is the climate change, and I have spoken about climate change, that right now the climate change is going to have 3 different kind of impacts. One is that we have energy, food, and water shortage. And if we do not change this agenda by conserving our water, by coming up with drought-resistant, pest-resistant, new yield varieties of our major crops, and if we do not have new technological developments in our agriculture, by 2050, we will have 350 million people, and our cropping area will be declining because of the floods, droughts, and the torrential rains. So we have an agenda which is very demanding. And that's why all the planning and all the documents on the strategy should now aim at looking at 2050 as to how we can meet the demands of these 350 million people, but at the same time, we can dampen the impact of the shortages of water, energy, and food, which is going to be a major problem. The fifth one is the financial integration. Now, the US today controls the international markets. The US interest rates goes up, the policy rate goes up. All the money is withdrawn from the developing countries towards the US. US dollar appreciates, the hit comes on the developing countries. While I'm all a believer in the financial integration, but the nature of financial integration which Pakistan requires today is a foreign direct investment in our productive sectors, in our exports, not portfolio investment. And what does it mean? That it brings new technology, it brings new markets, it brings new managerial practices, and it brings new ideas which we haven't, just practiced in Pakistan. So that's a flow of ideas, flow of technology, So financial integration for Pakistan's sake has to be very much tailor-made for the foreign direct investment in export sector, not in the sectors where Pakistan is a captive market of 220 million, so you produce only for domestic markets. So how can you have, your increase in the foreign exchange earnings if you're only producing for the domestic markets? So that is my suggestion. And finally, we have a huge information explosion, and that is creating some negativity among the young population of Pakistan. There are fake news, there is disinformation, there are sensationalism, and any country, especially if its youth starts believing in all this negative propaganda, they give up